All right, let's get started. So thank you everyone for taking time out of your busy days to come and join the webinar today. We're going to be discussing two key technologies within process intelligence. Those are process mining and process modeling, and particularly how using them together can more effectively help you roll out your continuous process improvement initiatives. A couple housekeeping notes before we jump into the meat of it. First of all, everyone's going to be on mute for the duration of the webinar. If you do have any questions, we have time for Q&A at the end. I'm more than happy to take them. I just ask that you please put them in the Q&A box rather than the chat box. That's way it's easier for me to get to them when we get to that point. The webinar is being recorded, and we will be sending out a recording afterwards. So if you do have to drop at some point, you are able to get the recording, but we hope you stay with us throughout the entire time. So with that being said, let's jump into it. I'm Max Smith. I'm a senior director of product marketing here at iGrafx, and I've spent over a decade building, designing, and bringing software products to market. I really love it. I love technology. I have a passion for market research. I've worked in different spaces around data technology and process technology, so data quality, management analytics, as well as process mining, modeling, and simulation. And most importantly, I love hearing from customers like yourselves, people in the industry, understand with all of this awesome technology that's coming out, how are you getting value from it? So I really do love what I do, and I'm happy to be giving the webinar today. So I mentioned that process mining and process modeling, which we're going to be focusing on today, are two technologies that are part of process intelligence. So I want to just take a minute to explain what process intelligence is, why we're talking about it, to really ground us for the rest of the webinar. So why process intelligence? If you think about it, a business is really the sum of its processes from the back office to the front office. And those processes really impact how well the company does or poorly, unfortunately. Great process builds lasting transformation, both digital and business transformation. And bad process can be expensive, costly, or even risky for the overall business process, for your overall business, rather. So process intelligence can help you deliver the business processes of the future today. And those business processes of the future, what do they look like? There's really three kind of key benefits to having great process. One, they improve productivity. So you're able to get more done with the same amount of resources. You can produce more, produce higher quality. Going hand in hand with that is these processes can help reduce costs. So you can keep your current volume, pace, and quality of what you're producing stable while decreasing investment. Often these go hand in hand. You might have heard people say, "Do more with less." So the do more is productivity, with less is the reduced costs. And then lastly, these processes also help you ensure compliance. So they help you maintain resilience in the face of financial and reputational risk. There are external regulation as well as internal policies that your processes need to comply with. So those are the benefits. That's the why of process intelligence. Let's talk a little bit about the what. So as a concept, process intelligence is really everything you need to understand the five W's, the who, what, why, when, and where of processes. But as a software category, it's also pretty well defined. It's a combination of existing technologies that you might be familiar with or already using, things like data analytics tools, process or task mining. We're going to be talking about process mining today. Process modeling as well. You might know it as EBPA or process design, as well as process simulation and automation. So it's really all the tools you need to understand your processes and then optimize them. And for these process intelligence tools, the value of having an integrated set of process intelligence tools provides exponential results compared to using them independently. So even if you have one or more of these tools, if you're using them in an isolated rather than an integrated fashion, you're not going to get the business benefit that you're expecting. Also importantly, and we're going to cover this through multiple points during the webinar, this is going to be a recurring theme. Process intelligence enables the shift from as is, where you are today, to the to be, where you want to get to. Now, making that change is inherently risky, and you need to be able to measure what positive change looks like. It needs to be objective, it needs to be measurable, and it needs to be focused. And process intelligence can help with that, and specifically mining and modeling. And then last, process intelligence can help make the complex simple. So there are a number of different perspectives, viewpoints, and incentive structures throughout an organization so that for processes, the frontline workers versus the executives versus the risk and compliance teams might have different goals for what that process is achieving. And process intelligence can really help manifest a convergence of perspectives from these different stakeholders. So we covered the why and the what of process intelligence. This slide is effectively the how. So how process intelligence can help you with your continuous process improvement initiatives. And this is a framework that process intelligence can help you follow, where you're ultimately discovering how your business processes run today. That's the as is that I was mentioning. You design how the business processes should run in the future, or tomorrow, if you will. And that's the to be that I was speaking of. And then lastly, you want to close the gap between the two and optimize those processes to help get closer to that to be state. And this, if we go back to the beginning, for discover, in that stage, what you want to do is have objective visibility into how your processes run. You want to really understand what's going on in depth. What are the bottlenecks that exist? What are the inefficiencies? How can I improve? And what's causing some of those challenges so that we can better address them more effectively? In the design stage, you want to be able to build the ideal future state process. And importantly, you want that to be collaborative. I mentioned that there's a convergence of perspectives from executives to frontline workers to risk and compliance teams. And so when you're designing that ideal state, you want to make sure it's ideal for everyone and that their concerns are heard and that their needs are addressed in the new process. You also, as part of that design, want to be able to quantify the impact that any changes you're making to this process through your re-engineering efforts. You want to be able to quantify the ROI that they provide. And lastly, you want to ensure that as you're designing that new process, that you remain compliant, that you're not making a change that might provide business performance, but ultimately exposes the business to new risk. And then lastly, as you optimize those processes and you execute on those continuous improvement initiatives, whether you're deploying new technology, you're deploying cultural change through people as part of your change management process, you're going to want to monitor what's happening, because at the end of the day, this is really a cyclical process. So as you make changes, you want to monitor what's going on, you want to rediscover the existing state of the process, and so on and so forth. So you continue to make change. That's the continuous part of continuous process improvement. Now, you might find yourself at different parts of this journey, and that's totally okay. We have something for everyone throughout the webinar, whether you're just starting or whether you're a little bit more advanced. We typically, I mentioned that this was cyclical and that you go through this process multiple times. That can happen for the same process. You could expand the scope of the process. You can move to different processes. So if you find yourself at one point or the other, that's totally fine. It is ongoing. Now to the core of the webinar. We said we were going to talk about process mining and process modeling and how they work better together. So one of the common questions I get asked by customers, prospects, and other people in industry that I talk to is, how should I get started? And that can mean a couple different things. Sometimes they're looking for what are the processes that we think provide the most value? Where should I start from a program perspective? But oftentimes they also ask, what technology should I use to get started? And two common considerations are process mining and process modeling. So we obviously want both in the long term, but where should we start? There's a couple different considerations for where one might be more effective than the other. And maybe I just pause here for a second to explain process mining and process modeling if there's anyone in the audience that isn't particularly familiar with the technology. So process mining works by it automatically generates process maps based on the data that already exists in your systems. So as those systems are running your processes, they're generating records of activity that are called event logs. So process mining reads those records of activity, and basically draws a process map for you that's based on the data. Process modeling, on the other hand, is generating diagrams, typically manually for a process. You might be familiar with a Visio, with a Lucidchart, or with a BPMN tool. And as you're drawing those diagrams, importantly, the difference between a diagram and a model is that you're relating that picture, that diagram, to the greater business model. So associating things like the people involved, the systems involved, the strategies and goals, and so on and so forth. And so that was just a really quick primer on these two technologies, but I'm assuming if you joined the webinar, you're probably familiar with both. So considerations for where to start. If you're looking to explore your process, if you don't really know exactly what you're looking for, but you know it can be improved, then process mining might be a better avenue. If you do have an idea of what you want to improve and you need to have a starting state to just say, this is what the process looks like today, you want to document that process, you want to say, these are the standard operating procedures, then process modeling might be a more effective starting place. Importantly, I mentioned earlier that process mining works on those records of activity that exist in the system. And so if the process you're looking to improve isn't digitized, if it doesn't run through systems, or if for whatever reason those systems don't generate that record of activity, it's unlikely, but it happens. You can only use process mining if it's digitized. If it's a legacy process, if it happens on paper or the process is a lot of person-to-person interaction, different handoffs or different meeting points, then process modeling might be more effective. Important to note that these aren't mutually exclusive. For a given process, part of it is probably going to be digitized, part of it is probably going to be off system. And so ultimately, we're going to use these together. But depending on how digitized it is, it might give you an insight as to which one of these technologies you might want to start with. The next thing is that process mining is really good at helping you understand those improvement opportunities objectively because they're based on the data. You can also very effectively do root cause analysis, drill down into things like, are there certain products that we're producing that are the problem? Are there certain regional discrepancies that are causing challenges to the overall global process? And then for process modeling, it really, as I mentioned before, helps you link those processes and contextualize them with your greater business model, understanding why is this process important and what are the pieces involved. So depending on what kind of insight you're looking to get or present to people, I would recommend one or the other. And then lastly, we mentioned the as is to the to be. Process mining is really good at helping you understand the as is state, how things are currently running. And so depending on if you need, I'll say, a carrot or a stick to help convince the organization to continue investing in these continuous improvement initiatives, process mining can help you evangelize what's wrong with the current process or what your opportunities for improvement are. Process modeling, on the other hand, can be really useful to create that to be state, which if you need to say, this is the art of the possible, this is what we could move to if we improved our processes, that'll help you evangelize, this is where we want to go. So those are two starting points, but ultimately, you're going to need to take the next step, which is using both. And so if you started with mining and you're looking to add modeling, if I could summarize it, modeling really contextualizes rather what you're seeing in mining. So it helps. So if you have that map that's generated from the system, that record of activity in the system, modeling can help you understand how is this process related to the corporate strategy and goals, to the OKRs, to the KPIs that we have. Effectively, what's the bigger picture purpose of this process? It can add that context. In that same vein, it can also add context around the different requirements for the process. So what systems do we need? What people and teams do we need? What work products, so assets going into or out of this process, do we need? And is this associated with any other programs or strategies or anything happening in the business in terms of corporate initiatives that we should be aware of? As I mentioned before, modeling also defines that gold standard. What should this process look like? What does that to be state look like? And so it gives you a place to go. So if you started with modeling, you understand, if you started with mining, you understand where you are. With this gold standard, you understand where you need to go. And then lastly is conformance checking. We're going to cover this on the next slide in more detail, but it helps you answer the question, is this process operating as designed? Because if you started with mining, you know how it's working, but you don't know if it's working in accordance with what you want. And then if you started with modeling, if I had to sum it up, I would say mining measures modeling. So you're not, if you're modeling your process from scratch, you may have conducted some interviews. You might have talked to stakeholders. You might have some idea around metrics for the process. You know, how long steps take. What's the overall throughput time of the process? What impact is this having on our customer satisfaction? But you're not going to have those data-driven insights that you can get directly from the systems using mining. So mining helps provide those process metrics. It can help tell you how healthy is the process, how compliant is it, and how performant is it. Mining can also help you, using that data, identify which of the opportunities in the process, because there's probably a number of ways you can improve it, which of those opportunities are most relevant. What are the biggest bang for your buck, comparing ultimate business benefit versus investment. And you might have a cursory level understanding of what the challenges of the processes are if you started with modeling, but you're not going to be able to dig into the root cause analysis. So you wouldn't be able to say, show me this process specifically for this process, or this product, or this particular type of service request, or this particular type of sales order. And so drilling down into those facets of the process is something that mining provides, and can help you get that level 2 understanding of where the opportunities for improvement are. And again, just like in if you added modeling to mining, if you add mining to modeling, you get this beautiful conformance checking, which we're going to move to in the next slide, which again answers the question, is this process operating as designed? So if we look at conformance, this is really the key, the glue, if you will, that binds the two. On the left side, in the GIF, you can see a process model in the background, and overlaid on top of it is data that's coming from process mining that shows you the different variants, the different paths that cases can go through the process. That could be it could be a sales order during the sales process. It could be a lead during the marketing process. It could be a customer service ticket during the CSM process. And what this is really showing, and for those of you that are already using mining or are considering starting with mining, there is also a view in mining that says, show me the reference model. So this goes both ways. This is the design focused view, this is the modeling focused view, but there's also a mining focused view. The important point here is you're able to compare in the same visualization what's happening today versus where do I want to be? And that's really the glue of change, right? That's the question that everyone wants to answer. So it answers that question, how far away from that ideal process are we? Also, as you're rolling out, as you're in the optimized phase of the process, this helps you answer questions like, is my change management program effective? Maybe you implemented a change and you need to see, did that change really take effect, or are people still doing the old thing? Are they investing in shadow IT or downloading some sort of other application instead of using the new technology that we deployed? This is also incredibly important if there's any risk and compliance teams in the audience, or just for any process professionals that work with risk and compliance teams commonly. When an auditor comes, whether that's the internal audit team or an external auditor, step one is you need to be able to say, this is our process, this is what it looks like. But then step two is you need to be able to prove compliance. And so using conformance checking, you can say, yes, the process is actually operating as it was designed. And then the last thing is, this can also give insights as to what can you tackle next. So, and in a similar vein as, is my change management program effective? You can identify what are still some areas of gaps or weakness that we should focus our most energy on, and can help continue your program forward. So that was a little bit of the, I'll say, like, academic technology view of how mining and modeling work together for process intelligence. Now I'm going to talk about a couple tips for the pragmatic side of it, like how you approach using these together and put it into practice. So putting the pro in improvement. There's three things that I'm going to focus on. The first one is that regardless if you're starting with mining, starting with modeling, or moving on to using both together, ROI is always going to be your currency. Process teams that I've talked to almost never have enough people, other resources, investment from the teams, at least at the beginning, that they want to do their job. And so the way that you get more investment is you show very quick wins. So at each step of the process, and we're going to talk about this next, you want to be demonstrating return on investment. The second is that you shouldn't buy into standard models. These come from a number of different places, but you should understand and appreciate your business is different than other businesses. So what good looks like, what that to-be gold standard state looks like, is going to be different for you than someone else, even if that company looks similar to you. So you need to start where it makes sense for you and then adapt based on your specific business goals. And then the third piece is you should choose the right vendor. So obviously, if you're looking at process mining or looking at process modeling, acquiring one of those solutions, or if you're looking at acquiring a larger process intelligence suite, like I said, these tools work better together. So you want to make sure that the vendor has both of these capabilities, maybe additional capabilities, and there's considerations for why you would choose one or the other. So focusing on that first point to start, ROI is your currency. Repeatable ROI is really the indicator for success and how you can move your continuous process improvement initiatives forward. Typically, the most success that I've seen when talking to customers is when they start very small. This could be a process, but it could even be lower than that. It could be a sub-process or just a specific part of a process. You're looking for a specific, well-defined business opportunity, so that it's easy to understand what's going on. It's easy to make that change. And it doesn't take a while to roll out those changes so you can demonstrate that ROI right away. This stage can happen with just one person, really. Sometimes it's a couple of people. And then after you've tackled that one part of the process, you have a couple options to expand. Either you can say, you can expand the process horizontally, or sorry, you can expand the process vertically. I'm moving my hands like this. You can expand the process vertically, which means, let's say you started in the payables process. So for those that don't know, in finance, when you order goods from a vendor, you have a payables team that's effectively paying the invoices. If you want to expand that process vertically, you can say, let's tap into procurement, which is the step before payables, which is where you're procuring the goods. If you want to expand even more, you can move into sourcing, which is where you're identifying which vendors you want to purchase from. So you might have started in just payables, and then you move to the purchase to pay, and then you move to source to pay. So you can expand vertically as you get success. Or you could expand horizontally. You could say, we want to tackle a different process area. So maybe you started in payables, but then you want to move to receivables, which is a different area of finance. This doesn't only apply to finance, it applies across the business. But the idea here is you can expand in a meaningful way. That the same stakeholders that would have bought in based on the ROI you already generated, they're going to find value in this next move as well. Typically, when a company or when a team has started to have that initial success, they're going to get some more investment. And so this could be a small group of people. This could be a line of business leader, a process expert, maybe someone from the risk and compliance team, and maybe someone from IT. So the core team is starting to grow in size a little bit. After that, you can expand to multiple different processes or lines of business. So, if we started in finance, maybe we move outside finance. Now we move to IT, or we move to operations, or we look to optimize a different part of the business. When you get to this stage, you're likely to get to the point where you're going to consider, or maybe you get in the process of standing up a dedicated center of excellence. So that would be dedicated process professionals that then serve a number of different line of business units. And then once you've optimized processes across the business, you can start connecting the dots and look at this from a holistic, more of a digital twin type perspective. And at that point, you're definitely going to have a dedicated center of excellence to get there. So I walk through the important steps to showcase some of what I've seen with the most successful organizations. But the important point here is the focus is don't try to boil the ocean. Get a quick win, demonstrate ROI using mining and modeling together to show that improvement that you've made and how you've measured that improvement, and then go from there as you work your way through. The second point was beware of the best practice models. These models come from a number of different places. Software vendors provide them, consultants provide them. So for software vendors, particularly with process modeling vendors, you can, and particularly like vendors that also have core systems, like if they also provide an ERP, a CRM, a CSM type system, they might have best practice models for those particular processes within that other technology that they provide. These can be really useful because they've seen these processes a lot. I'm not saying that you should never use a best practice model or that they don't provide value. They do. You should just make sure that those models make sense for your business, because maybe you're not at the same stage for that model. Maybe it's a little bit more advanced than where you're at, or maybe you're really advanced and the model's a little bit too primitive. Or maybe it makes sense for big companies and not for small companies. There's all kinds of considerations. So it can give you a good idea of maybe what you want the process to look like. But I wouldn't, for instance, use that when you're doing conformance checking and say, okay, this is our gold standard. Let's see how we're doing against it. You want to specialize it to your business. Consultants are also, as far as continuous process improvement goes, very helpful most times. They come with a wealth of domain expertise and frameworks that they can use to help drive value for you. But you want to make sure, again, that their process is tailored to you, and that it's not just some generic process that, again, is meant for the average company and not your company. And then the last place that you might get some best practice metrics are from reference data sets, things like APQC. And you just want to make sure that if you're looking for a metric to say, like, is my process fast enough compared to my peers? Is my process designed in the right way? Do I have the right amount of resources allocated to it? If you're answering those kind of questions, just make sure that the reference data you're using applies to your specific peer group. I sound like a broken record here, but the overall important point here is there's a number of external sources that you can get to say what does good look like, and those can be very valuable. Just make sure that what good looks like is actually relative to your, or relevant to your business rather. And then the last is you should choose the right vendor. I work at iGrafx. It's not a secret here that we're hosting the webinar, so I would encourage you to check out the product that we offer. I'll talk about it in a second. But you really shouldn't take my word for it, and you shouldn't take any other vendor's word for it. You should look at the information that's out there in the market. So there are a number of different review sites, so you can look at customer reviews. There are industry-leading analysts like Gartner and Forrester and the likes that produce reports that cover the space. And so I would say look at that third-party information, because I think I'm pretty trustworthy, but don't trust me. I'm a vendor, right? Look at those reports and understand which of those companies do offer mining and modeling, which offer other facets of process intelligence technology that you might want to use, and understand what people are saying about them. Look for references. So the last part for me then is, what can iGrafx do? So we talked about that discover, design, optimize journey. I should mention, for those that aren't familiar, our product is called Process 360 Live. It's a cloud-based platform that combines different elements that we spoke about today. But if we look at that journey, that improvement journey that businesses take through discover, design, and optimizing their processes, you start with your business operations, how things are today, and ultimately through this process, you're going to realize and generate business value. At each of those steps, there's technology that can help support. So in the discovery step, we talked about process mining, but there's also task mining, there's process mapping, there's risk analytics. In the design stage, we have modeling, and not just process modeling, but also value stream mapping, customer journey mapping, and the like. Also process simulation. So when I said you should test your ideas, your improvement ideas to quantify the ROI. Process simulation is a great way to do that so that you can have confidence that the change you're going to make is going to deliver the intended result without having to make that change in a live production system. Also, risk management. So making sure that your processes, you have your catalogs of risks, your catalogs of mitigating controls. You can report on that through things like heat maps. You can use approval cycles to make sure that processes are going through the right channels and aren't circumventing any risk steps. So a lot related to that. And then lastly, on the optimize step, automation integration to help from a technology perspective in your change management efforts, as well as predictive analytics and process monitoring to help understand where your process might be going off track before it becomes too much of a problem. So again, and this is really the point where we start to shift and it becomes cyclical back to discover. And so the last piece is I talked about the integration. And each of these pieces of technology have specific integrations with other pieces. So for instance, I mentioned conformance checking between mining and modeling, but also things like the data you get from mining can be very useful for your process simulations to create a baseline model. But one of the core pieces of glue that ties everything together is this AI-enabled process repository at the center, which stores all of that information about your processes, the data that you have from mining, the models that you built, the contextualization with your business model. All of that is stored in a centralized place that can then be governed more appropriately. And it's enabled with AI to get the data in, to make sense of the data, and so on and so forth. And so that's the iGrafx product in a nutshell. If you're interested, we'd be happy to talk more about it. But again, we encourage you, please check out the third-party analysts that cover the space and make your own informed decisions about this technology. And then last, as a summary, this is my last slide, and then I'll jump to Q&A. So just a reminder, if you do have any questions, please put them in the Q&A box, not the chat box. We are definitely going to have time, and I'd be more than happy to have a conversation with anyone that wants to. So in summary, process intelligence is really key to true business transformation. Process intelligence involves a number of pieces of technology, including process mining and process modeling. Good process builds lasting transformation. Bad process is expensive. Mining and modeling specifically together will produce exponential returns using things like conformance checking. It'll really help you as you're shifting from the as-is to the to-be to understand, first of all, what does the as-is and to-be look like? And second of all, what progress am I making in that progression? And then last, your improvement journey is unique to your business. Core principles aren't. So make sure you focus on ROI at each stage of your journey. Make sure if you're using best practice models, you're very aware of how relevant or not they are to your business. Make sure they're focused. And lastly, choose the right vendor for your mining, modeling, and other process intelligence type solutions because you want to, the technology is only as beneficial as the technology is, right? So with that, I'm going to wrap up and move to Q&A. Question, does iGrafx do task mining as well as process mining? So iGrafx does not offer task mining specifically natively. We offer that through a partner. So we built some integrations with that partner so you can get those task mining models in alongside process mining. So we do offer it, but it's through partnership. It's not something that we built ourselves. I have a question specifically about about that conformance checking option that they saw. How can you get to that in iGrafx? We can follow up with you specifically. We can make sure that your rep sends you instructions to get there. Does iGrafx offer any online training programs? I'm only aware of some of the free programs offered by Celonis. It would be great and beneficial to know about online programs being offered by iGrafx. So yes, there are free training programs. We have what's called iGrafx University, and there are programs for mining, for modeling, for simulation, all across the Process 360 Live platform. And there are different tracks. So if you're an administrator, if you're an analyst, you can take the programs most relevant for you. So yes, iGrafx University, check it out. I will also say that although we're not all the way there yet, we're in the middle of some UI and UX improvements in the product. We're kind of redesigning the interface, and that's going to have a lot more guided walkthroughs of the product itself, so that you don't necessarily need to go to a separate university training. That's always going to be beneficial, but if you're just looking to get in and do something quickly, the product should help hold your hand a little bit more than it has previously. My company is using a competitor product, and one of the challenges we are experiencing is the level of effort to keep our process mining updated. Our business has bi-weekly releases, and we're in a constant state of change. Can you talk about how to manage process mining in an extremely volatile environment? I'm going to take a shot at this, but I'm not sure I 100% understand it. So please ask another question if you're not getting the answer that you want. So process mining, I didn't talk about this actually, but there's a couple different ways to get the data in. One way is to do a file extract. So from one of those systems, so you could extract that event log that I talked about, or that record of activity from into like a CSV file or an Excel file, and then upload that into process mining. Another is if you have a direct connection to the system, so that way you can have a more live view of the data within that system that's being refreshed on whatever update you want. You know, that could be a very short amount of time, or it could be a day, a week, whatever it is, whatever makes sense for the process. So if the challenge, I would say with the file-based import, that should be more easy to handle, because I would expect that the changes wouldn't impact that type of data in terms of the structure that you're getting out in terms of the columns and things like that. If the systems that you're tapping into from an API perspective, if you have that more live data, and the system you're tapping into has, you're saying biweekly updates where they're, for instance, like changing the parameters you use to access those APIs or the data you're getting back, that might be a little bit more challenging. There's nothing you can really do about that if they're changing their APIs. In that case, maybe a file might be more effective and a little bit more stable. But it really depends on the specific situation. So again, sorry if I didn't exactly understand what you were asking. Another one, what are the benefits of the AI-enabled process repository? As far as I know, my company just has a normal process repository. So AI actually works in a number of different ways, some behind the scenes, some more visible. So it might actually be working behind the scenes and you're not actually aware of it, or it depends. It really depends. But the number of ways that I guess, first of all, let me talk about what the AI-enabled process repository is, and then I can talk about what the benefits are. So in terms of what it is, there's a couple different uses of AI surrounding this process repository. The first one is getting data in. And so if you're familiar with iGrafx already, you know that you could import a BPMN file if you already had it. You could draw a model yourself, or you could use something like QuickMap, where you kind of fill out a table and it automatically generates the diagram for you. We're working on right now using Gen AI to be able to create those models through natural language. Also, as part of that assistant, as you can think of it in the product, we're working on being able to ask questions and query process information that is stored in the repository. And then one of the more hidden uses of AI is really the rationalization of those data sources that are coming in. So like I mentioned, you can get data into the system a number of different ways. I didn't even mention things like documents or things like images, sorry. And it can help make sense of, if you have disparate sources of information for this process, like what does that ultimately look like? In terms of the benefits, this makes it overall easier from a user experience perspective, and it also decreases time to value. So one of the biggest barriers to entry for a process repository is filling it up. Where are you getting this information from? Do you have to draw the models from hand, Are you generating them in process mining and importing them? Are you like uploading standard operating procedures? So using AI to make that process A, more seamless, and B, faster is really the biggest benefit. There's also a benefit of, in some cases, AI can be more accurate. So they're not always. Sometimes, a person can do a task better than the AI can, but oftentimes there's an element of human error that's introduced, and so the process can be a little bit more safeguarded using that. Can iGrafx help automatically build BPMN2 diagrams for process mining? Yes, you can select your variants in process mining, or select the entire data set and automatically generate a BPMN2 process model off of it. And you can send that directly to the process repository in Process 360 Live. So you don't have to export a file, import a file. You can just shove it right in the repository. Can you disclose which partner you use for task mining? Yes, we use KYP. We're constantly looking for additional partnerships as well, to help support our growing community. But KYP is currently the one that historically we have been working with. Is Process 360 Live HIPAA compliant? I actually don't know the answer to that. I'm sorry. I wish I had a product member on the team that could answer it, but I don't want to lie and I'm not sure. We can follow up after the webinar. Do you have any t-shirt sizing available for different process mining offerings depending on your company size, process frequency, and/or expected impact? Yes, there is. There is a tiering model and some jumping off points in terms of. I'm assuming by t-shirt sizing you mean pricing. Yes, it exists, and if you reach out to us or if you're an existing customer, I'm sure the rep could give that to you as well. If we have Visio BPMN files, can we import those in iGrafx? So far, I've heard this is impossible. So as far as I'm aware, unless they have changed this recently, Visio does not actually have BPMN files. So they have a BPMN shape library, so you could draw a BPMN diagram, but there's no check to make sure that it's actually, up to BPMN2 standard. So if you export one of those from Visio, it's going to be a .visio file, or I actually forget what the exact extension is, but it's going to be a Visio export. We do, and we've actually recently, I think this was last month, released an updated version of our Visio importer that uses some fuzzy logic. Also, I think AI this is another appropriate use of AI. To turn that Visio file into an actual BPMN file. So we do have that import capability available. In my country, I don't see a trend in companies to adopt process mining. What would you suggest can be done to make companies more aware of its benefits and get started? I feel like I am the only proponent and advocate of its necessity and importance in my country. I think there's a number of different ways that I can answer this question, but the thing that I would focus on is the ROI. So there are a number of solutions that have free either free trials, or you can do a free POC, or just some way to get a sample set of your data into a tool like that. Because I think it can be a little bit abstract for someone that's not as technology adept if you're trying to just explain what it is. But once you can show someone, here's a map of my process and here are some of our opportunities for improvement, I feel like that's when the light bulb moment happens for people. And once you do that and you get a little bit of investment to work on this and you get some ROI, like I was mentioning in the webinar, then it just kind of starts the cycle and the waterfall starts happening. But I would say you want to, and vendors are happy to help you. I mean, iGrafx is, I would be shocked if other vendors aren't willing to help you as well. To basically help you showcase the value of process mining to the rest of the organization, through the process maps, through the dashboards, through that opportunity identification. It helps to have a business case associated with it, as opposed to just making this an academic pursuit of looking into your processes. I have another question about the AI-enabled process repository. I explained that earlier, but if you have an additional question, please add it. Our company is in the initial stages of looking at this technology, and we presently have a small group working on process improvement initiatives. In your experience, what is the typical sizes of the teams that are dedicated to this type of work before they consider this technology solution? Will this technology be more applicable when the business has matured to a center of excellence? Um, I'm assuming when you're saying technology that you're talking about the combination of process mining and process modeling, and we're talking about process intelligence as a whole. But again, if you're asking the question about a specific piece of technology, please clarify. Also, the comment is anonymous, which is totally fine. But if you are clarifying, just please let me know that you're referring to that comment that you made. You can absolutely start small with this technology. So like I said, there's a lot of free trials. There's a lot of POCs that you can do that just take one person. You need to, if you're using process mining, you do need to be able to get access to that data. So if you have administrative rights, you might be able to download some of that data. If you have to work with IT, then you have to work with them. But either way, you don't need to set up a complex system integration to start with. You can do a file-based extract to get process mining up and running. So really, you can just have one process person and someone from IT that can get you that data that you need to start with process mining. From process modeling perspective, you really only need one person to start creating diagrams and start modeling them with the business. Of course, the value is increased as you build out the context around those models. That's going to involve more stakeholders like the risk and compliance team. But to start out, the team can be quite small. Like it could be 1, 2, 3 people. I've definitely seen success there. And if you if you listen to the analysts that cover the space, they'll say the same thing. I will say though that to really kind of see that full benefit, like to realize the vision, the art of the possible, we do see most companies standing up a center of excellence that kind of has ownership over all of the process intelligence technology. I think that is the end of the questions. Awesome. Thank you so much for coming to the webinar, hearing us talk about process mining and modeling. I hope it has you excited for what you might be able to achieve. We're more than happy to have a conversation with you as to what your next steps could be. But if not, thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of the day.